Kerry, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Of course, Kerry, you just came out with some exclusive reporting about Google co-founder Sergey Brin. Tell us what you found.
So it turns out that Sergey Brin, over his lifetime, has given more than $1.1 billion toward Parkinson's research. And this is the first time that really anyone has reported this. I heard about this from people who are familiar with his philanthropic activities. He is somebody who's at higher risk of getting Parkinson's than most of the rest of us because of a genetic mutation he has. And his mother has Parkinson's and has the same genetic mutation. And he's known about this for more than a decade.
Did he start donating once he found out about his mother as well as that his own genetic mutation?
Yeah, he did. Actually, I think he even started donating before that. So one of the places that he's donated to the most is the Michael J. Fox Foundation, which is named after the popular actor who's had Parkinson's for 3 decades. And it's the largest Parkinson's charity in the country. And he met the head of that foundation more than a decade ago, I think before he even knew that he had this genetic mutation. But then his giving has really ramped up in recent years. And a lot of that is because he empowered his philanthropic team starting around 2017 to come up with a plan to really jumpstart basic research of the disease. There's a lot of things we do not know about Parkinson's.
Let's start there. What do we know about Parkinson's and what is still a mystery about it?
So we know that it's a neurodegenerative disease. It results in stiffness and difficulty moving, loss of balance and gait. People also lose the sense of taste and sense of smell. And eventually people die from it. They have trouble swallowing. It's a horrible disease. And there hasn't really been a new drug to treat Parkinson's for more than 50 years. I mean, there are new drugs that treat the symptoms, but there are no drugs that slow down the progression of the disease or stop it. And part of the problem is what we don't know. So I talked to Dr. Jim Beck at the Parkinson's Foundation, and he put it to me very bluntly. We don't know what causes the death. So basically what happens is the dopamine producing neurons in the brains die off. So they know that, but they don't know why the dopamine neurons die. They don't know how to measure the progress of the disease. They don't know how to slow it. And they just don't know how to, and they don't know how to stop it. So there's a lot of, there's some bits that's known. And in the past dozen years or so, they've figured out that there's 20 genes that they've found that are associated with the disease. Two of them are kind of more prominent, and Sergey has one of them. It's called the LRRK2 gene, and his mom has that as well. It's a mutation on the gene we'll stop there. Well, maybe I'll do that again. So in the past dozen years or so, researchers have found more interesting information, particularly in the genetics of the disease. There's about 20 genes associated with the disease, and one of the most common, although it's still a very small percentage of all Parkinson's cases. Anyway, one of the most common of the genetic mutations is called the LRRK2 gene, which Sergey Brin and his mother have.
So why has there been so much research money put toward the LRRK2 gene if only 1 to 2% of the cases are that?
Yeah, I mean, that question came up. Somebody was suggesting to me, like, gosh, has this LRRK2 gene gotten more research money because Sergey has this genetic mutation for this? Is there a sort of like favoritism here among, the biggest billionaire donor in the space has this? Is that why this is? And I talked to several people about this, and one of them, who I quoted in the story, basically says yes. Well, it says no, there's no favoritism going on. Basically, even though this form of the disease is rare, having this genetic model for research purposes is a gift, because there's so little that's known about the disease in general. Like being able to follow the pathways and what goes wrong with the gene here is super helpful. And the Dr. Beck from the Parkinson's Foundation, who mentioned this to me, also said it's not like all the money's only going to this LRRK2 research. There's plenty of money going. I mean, this new initiative that Sergey Brin's people started called ASAP, Aligning Science Across Parkinson's. So far, they've spent $290 million on research, and not, I don't know the exact percentage that's going toward the LRRK2 research, but it's going to be just a portion of that.
I do want to talk about ASAP because in 2017, you reported that there was a shift in the funding of Brin's philanthropic team. So can you expand on that?
One of their ideas was to bring researchers together from outside of the Parkinson's field and have them work collaboratively with Parkinson's researchers. And so they started this program called Aligning Science Across Parkinson's, ASAP, and they're giving teams of researchers, they have to work collaboratively. A lot of them are like teams from 2 different universities. You have people like a chemical engineer working with a biochemist, working with the neurology professor or a practicing neurologist. And they're bringing different knowledge sets together, and they're giving them grants of up to $9 million over 3 years, which is generous in the world of academic funding. Also, it's, if the NIH, the National Institutes of Health, was granting people research money, you might not be able to give somebody who, say, worked at Stanford with someone that worked in Scotland the money, because it's US, it's US government money. It might only be able to go to US researchers. In Brin's case, he's able to fund international teams to work together. There's 35 teams from 14 different countries, and they all have to share their information internally, and they have to publish their results in open science journals, which means, the general public doesn't have to pay to get a subscription to the journal to read it.
Wow. So can you explain this strategy a little bit? Why is there a focus on this basic research opposed to drug discovery or clinical trials?
Yeah, definitely that, I'm sure if you're a Parkinson's patient, you want a drug now. You want a drug tomorrow, or anything that will help you stop the disease or slow it or turn it around. And there definitely are some efforts going on there, and the Brin Family Foundation is funding some of them. But because there's so many key facts that we don't know, about like what exactly is causing the dopaminergic neurons to die in the brain, without knowing that information, it's much harder to develop drugs. So the idea is having a more sound understanding of basic science will enable better diagnostic testing to be developed and better drugs to be developed. It's kind of like you can't put the cart before the horse. You can't develop drugs if you don't really understand what the root cause is and the mechanisms, the biological mechanisms.
Understood. And how involved is Brin with this?
He's actually not that involved. He would not talk to me for the article, which is not surprising. He doesn't really talk to the media that much. The person I talked to, Randy Sheckman, who is a Nobel laureate and a professor of biology at UC Berkeley, he's the scientific director of this ASAP initiative. He's only met Brin once, he said, but he said he's totally fine with that, because he said that Brin basically picks people and gives them trust and lets them go. And Brin's got a philanthropic team that's doing a lot of the work. But he knows what's going on, but he's definitely not involved in the details.
Definitely the opposite of a micromanager, but is this hands-off approach normal?
No, it's not. I mean, it was interesting to hear even Randy Sheckman from ASAP was saying what he's heard very different things about, say, what it's like to work, with Chan Zuckerberg or with Mark Zuckerberg and his wife Priscilla Chan and their Chan Zuckerberg initiative, or even the Gates Foundation. They're very hands-on. I don't know that Bill Gates is very hands-on in everything that goes on in the Gates Foundation, but I think the management is.